Putin's motive in Ukraine is because he is afraid of them. The potential invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the Western response has been in almost every news cycle, with posturing by both sides. But what is really driving Russia's over-the-top actions? Why would Russian President Vladimir Putin attack a neighboring country that has not provoked him? Why would he risk sanctions and perhaps an economic crisis as a result? Does this have an end-time connection? Yes, it does, but probably not the one you think, because the media lies. It's happening, as we said, because Putin is afraid. Russia has claimed from the very beginning that they want to prevent Ukraine from becoming a part of NATO, that is their primary issue. But why? Why would Russia care about Ukraine entering into a defensive alliance? Well, maybe because they aren't worried about defense. Maybe they're worried about offense, to which you are probably scratching your head. But remember, we traditionally form our opinions the way the media presents it, and the media does not show two sides of most issues. For instance, in 1990, NATO promised that it would never expand to the east, like into Ukraine. It promised it would never do that. And then in 2008, it promised Ukraine and Georgia that they could one day join the alliance, although it appears they're no closer to that happening now than it did way back then. So Russia has a point. NATO is two-faced. But why is this such a big issue now? Why now? Well, because the issue to Putin is much larger than a defensive alliance. Last year, about this time, we published a video about Putin's speech to the Davos globalist meeting. A link to that old video is down in the description. Listening to Putin in this speech, I had to ask myself, is Putin scared of the globalists? Of the World Economic Forum and the UN? I had to conclude from his speech that he is very scared. He hid that fear behind warnings of the end of civilization and worldwide conflict. But it was fear that was motivating him. He knows the Davos crowd is planning on eliminating national sovereignty, as we've been reporting, and creating a world system of governance. And Putin wants no part of this. He wants to continue his own power, his own sovereignty. He wants to control Russia. But he sees the UN plans and the Davos World Economic Forum plans just plowing right ahead, and everything going ahead according to plan. In his 2021 speech, Putin attributed the worsening world economic situation to a Western liberal economic model that he said foments social, racial, and ethnic intolerance, with tensions erupting, problems that will undermine the existing nation states, and he sees it happening. The Russian leader also pointed to what he described as the negative role of technology companies that run the social networks, charging that they've abused their position and tried to control society, replace legitimate democratic institutions, and usurp an individual's right to decide how to live and what to express. He added that tech companies were not just economic giants. In some areas, they are already de facto competing with the nation states. And he's absolutely right. We have seen it all in the United States, Putin said, referring to then President Trump being banned from Twitter, a move that has caused disquiet in several European countries. Putin sees a decline of Western governments and the rise of globalist corporations taking control. And we've reported on this many times on this channel. Given that the threat from the globalists are primarily Western, Russia wants a geographic buffer between his nation and Europe should the European globalists initiate a struggle between them. Putin, in the opinion of his channel, is worried about defense, not offense. Yet, of course, this is not what you hear on Western media or social media, or even from our government. Think about it. When was the last time a conservative or liberal American politician warned us about the globalists and their plan to reset the global economy and governments? Never. Although this is the greatest threat to each and every American. Rather, they distract us with infighting among themselves when the true threats to the country are just ignored. That tells me These politicians, conservative and liberal, are all in on it. That the globalists hold the power and the politicians are going along with them for personal reasons. But Putin is not ignoring them. He understands the threat that the globalists pose to him. He wants to retain his power, and unlike other world leaders, he isn't going along with the globalists without kicking and screaming. So it will be interesting to see how America and Europe respond to Putin. The U.S. was extremely weak in its Afghanistan withdrawal, so why are they taking a more solid stance on Ukraine? Because their globalist handlers are calling the shots. And the direction that the West is taking is almost begging Putin to invade. It's almost like he has no other choice. It's like that is what the West wants him to do. Instead of doing the simple thing, sit down at the table with Putin and agree not to allow Ukraine into NATO for some specified period of time, they won't do it. Yet Ukraine adds almost nothing to NATO. They're not strategically important to NATO at all. In fact, if you think about it, what's more valuable? An unaligned Ukraine in between Russia and NATO, not affiliated with either, or an occupied Ukraine where Russia's in control? That's much more dangerous. But that is what they're pushing Russia to do. It is a simple thing to concede. So why are the Western nations and their globalist handlers trying to force Putin's hand? They seem to want him to invade. So why? Well, for one, it turns the world against Putin. Remember that the UN plan for 2023 is for the nations to begin to surrender their national sovereignty to a new one-world governance system. That's what the UN has put out back in September in their written plans. We reported on that in this channel. And a rogue state like Russia right now is the perfect excuse to begin to make something like that happen. Second, the pandemic. The globalists' primary plan is falling apart. This creates a new crisis. You know they never want to let a crisis go to waste. And probably some new form of totalitarianistic interventions are coming, just like we had with the pandemic. So if you think it's odd that Biden went from a wimp to holding his ground on this issue, you need to ask yourself why. Why and why now? The answers, I believe, are the creation of Mystery Babylon, the first global empire, the one that comes before the beast. Now, some may argue that Putin is scared of no one because he's Gog, the leader of the alliance in Ezekiel 38. Well, maybe he is, but maybe he isn't. Click right here to learn if Russia is involved in the Gog of Magog struggle at all, and if Gog is a Russian or someone else. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.